So now, some of the discussion board questions that you're going to see out there at this point in discussing the case is, I'm wondering about what do you think of this notion of platform, this concept of platform replacing storefront, and how that platform concept is related to the digital economy. What platforms have you used? What platforms do you participate in more regularly, and what features of those platforms bring you back? Where are the switching costs associated with some of those platforms? Are they high, low, or are you indifferent? You'll go to any platform. And if they are high, how did the platform owner or the organization build those high switching costs in? And then I want you to also, like I said earlier, be thinking about other examples of platforms that deploy this long tail strategy. Now, another element of this is with Netflix, we see a subscriber model. So I'd like you to comment on what is churn rate and how does that relate to this concept of switching costs. And finally, I'd like you to contemplate why did Netflix shift to this subscription model versus this DVD by mail model, and how did that alter the company and make it as successful as it is today? So those are some questions to go out there and take a look at, but let's continue our discussion because there's going to be some more. So what are the important points for our course regarding this case? Well, Netflix is really a prime example of shifting from physical products to digital services or products. In fact, I wonder if you should think now of a movie as a product, like in the sense of, you buy some good from the store and you take it home and consume it, or if it's a lawnmower, you use it. Really, we're renting, right, a lot of these movies. So the digital economy model is more like a service providing us a rental of these movies that when we're done, that goes away. We don't keep it like we keep the lawnmower and have to maintain it. So something different is at play here. But this introduces challenges for companies like Netflix. You have to be sure that you have enough media or content available. I mean, on your platform, you don't want people to show up and it says, nope, I don't have that. Now that's very similar to this concept of inventory, as if we were going to buy that lawnmower. If they don't have any lawnmowers in stock, we're off to the next store. Or if the one that we prefer isn't there, then we may go on to the next store. So the media or the content has to be available for our subscribers in this Netflix model. There's also some interesting things about the partnering that goes on with Netflix. There are a lot of negotiations and costs associated with working with other partners who provide that inventory. Now, Netflix is beginning to create its own original content, but a lot of the movies that it has on its site arrangements are made with some of the major studios who've produced those movies. So the costs and negotiation and how you work with these other partners become an important facet of the Netflix platform. There's also some big issues with the legal environment. So you buy things, you rent them. What are the rights that people have to use those videos? What are your legal rights so that the content providers are happy and are making the money that they want? And how does all this work? Licensing content is a lot different than, again, exchanging the dollars to buy that lawnmower and take it home. The other thing is the nature of competition can change pretty fast in this industry. That was quite a rapid transition, really, from DVD sales in storefronts to having movies available via streaming media. So things can change very quickly. And the ones who are in early seem to have an advantage, but the competition is cutthroat, and it could be that in a lot of these industries, it's winner take all. That if you can't compete, then you're going to find yourself in bankruptcy. This leads to some other points about the digital economy in general. When we think about running a business and selling those lawnmowers that we've been using as an example, we would have the lawnmowers in inventory. We would probably have paid the producer of those products to store them in inventory, but the Netflix model would be that we probably have some content agreement with those partners, but our distribution costs, you know, the way that we take those and deliver them through the supply chain don't go through the same type of transportation requirements that lawnmower would as it makes its way to your store. So the distribution costs don't really correlate directly with product production anymore. In addition, then, there are probably costs for the distribution of each unit for that lawnmower, but for the over-the-top type of content delivery on the internet, that cost is very minimal, if not zero, because you're putting it over a mechanism that is fairly largely public. Now, there's some discussion of that we'll have a little bit later. But right now, it's really a marginal cost of zero to sort of ship one more movie to your home. Now, like I said, there are issues here. There's something called net neutrality that is being debated. It's being hotly debated as to whether you should be charged for faster service or slower service. And to this point, I'd encourage you to take a look at how those laws in your particular country or area may be shaking out. But this is a large debate related to the digital economy. So there may be fees coming to deliver the content faster, and we might find that there are major changes in how home internet providers like your cable provider or your wireless phone carrier might be delivering these elements. The other thing that's unique here is in the case of Netflix, they actually leverage Amazon Web Services. Well, Amazon Web Services is a distinct business unit of Amazon. Amazon Prime is also a business unit. So the infrastructure capabilities that Amazon Prime is delivering is actually helping an Amazon Prime competitor. So that's a little bit interesting notion in this environment, but some people refer to it as frenemies or working together, and some people refer to it as co-opetition. But digital economy can introduce interesting things that we've never seen before or not seen as frequently in our old economy. There are some interesting legal issues around the content that we'll see as we go forward as well. There's lots of laws surrounding the renting and loaning of protected products, and those are evolving. Of course, movies are copyrighted, and copyright laws may change, and they may vary across the world. And laws that deal with how products or a service turns into bits and bytes and then get delivered according to those bits and bytes are still very complex and evolving. Also, the way that movies are being staggered in their delivery, they call it the theatrical window, can alter quite drastically. So for now, movies appear in the brick and mortar theaters where you can go see them on a big screen with an advanced sound system. They may transition fairly quickly to DVD and then may move somewhere in that window to Netflix and to Redbox and to the other competitors. But the way that window is adjusting and moving over time is going to be interesting to watch. Also, your major movie studios really are probably pushing to shrink that window because they're looking at how they make their profits. And it could be that wider, faster distribution is a way that they can make more revenue. But it depends on those negotiations with all of the partners involved. So I think streaming license fees are going to be a key consideration going forward. Like, for example, you're comparing the costs of cutting the cord, so to speak, with these different streaming providers. And what you might have to pay for one versus the other versus the content that you're available to obtain. and then compare that with what you might be able to watch over on your phone or however you might look at the environment. But the digital economy has a way of rapidly changing how everything is being distributed and how we consume it. Now, if we think of Porter's forces related to this, just really quickly, really the movie studios don't have the power that they used to. Netflix has a lot of power in getting your content to customers. The collaborative filtering, the recommenders provide content recommendations that will cause some movies to maybe be watched more than others. Also, Netflix has increasing control over how the content is distributed. Of course, they're beginning to make their own originals, which will directly compete with the movie studios. Now, maybe they'll form partnerships with movie studios to build content. That's another question. Our power of buyers is really tempered because using data as an asset creates higher switching costs. And our third-party intermediaries in what we call the old economy movie business are being ousted. So these are the different types of players that were involved in distributing movies to the theaters, and different types of business activities that were there are changing. We call this disintermediation via digital economy mechanisms. So I think the final thing to say about Porter's forces is the intensity of the industry rivalry here is really going through the roof. And it's creating an exciting time, albeit a confusing time for customers on how best to get their content. So what are some of the big takeaways? We'll wrap this case up with a quick discussion of these takeaways. One, data can be an asset for sustainable competitive advantage. Two, the shift to the digital economy for organizations is very profound. It shakes things out. It's cutthroat. Companies go by the wayside. They disappear if they haven't paid attention to the shift. The other thing is entire customer experiences can change. I think the way people watch video content now, when Netflix releases a whole series, you might sit down and what they call binge watch that entire series versus having to wait to watch it once a week as it might have been doled out on regular television. All of the business concepts like profits, costs, margins, the thought of inventory, all of those get reinterpreted as we look at digital economy types issues and shift from traditional products to this services or service product type notion. The content businesses are already very intensively competitive. And that's going to just be more so it'll be fun for you to watch now as IT enables more of these different types of business organizations. The last thing I'll say is there's really a lot of room in this digital economy for that concept we've called creative destruction, where entrepreneurs with new ideas can come in and say, here's how I could make use of this notion of streaming media to create a new platform and maybe follow a long tail strategy in a way that nobody's considered before in this industry. And that's a pretty exciting thing about IT-enabled competition. So now, finally, will Netflix's use of collaborative filtering, the notion of streaming media, will those technologies allow it to sustain competitive advantage? That's an open question, and I look forward to your comments on the discussion board. Thank you.